Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey deep into the past, where 25 million years ago, a new species emerged on Earth. A species that would ultimately give birth to the first humans. So before we dive in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you are ready for a story like no other. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's adventure together. Our story begins with the great apes, creatures that dominated the land long before we did. But how did we get here? What turned these magnificent beasts into the humans we are today? Grab a seat, because we're about to uncover the mysterious ancestors who took the first steps into what we call humanity. 25 million years ago, a new species appeared on Earth, the great apes. Among them was one family with extraordinary abilities. They were our distant ancestors. Through evolution, they gave rise to new, more advanced species, then ventured far and wide and invented hunting, power, tools, love, and soon war. They competed with the great beasts, conquered the planet, adapted to every climate. They became us, Homo sapiens, modern man. Where and when did our lineage begin? Who was the first of us? What is that quality that makes us human? The difference that sets us apart from other animals? Thanks to the latest scientific discoveries, we're about to take a journey into the depths of time to find out which of our ancestors took the decisive step and gave birth to the first man. Our family story begins 25 million years ago, at a time of intense global warming. With the vast Tethys Ocean fragmenting and closing off in the Near East, humid forests spread north from Africa. Our distant ancestors followed the forest and rapidly populated the ancient world. They ruled the canopy, 100 different species. Gigantopithecus, Ramapithecus, and Sivapithecus stretched from Europe to modern-day China. This is the age of the planet of the apes. Which of these great primates is our common ancestor? The Mediterranean coast, 13 million years ago, in modern-day Spain. A humid tropical forest. Here lives a creature with exceptional abilities. This acrobat is Pyrrholopithecus. The animal kingdom has never seen such a marvel. This great ape is the origin of our family. But how? What makes him our great-grandfather? We're only beginning to understand. Pyrrhola lives in the trees and mainly eats fruit. He's too heavy to walk on the branches, so he hangs, though he does sometimes end up on 2 feet. He can walk. Contrary to common belief, the ability to walk upright wasn't developed on the ground, but up in the branches. Bipedalism was not man's invention, but the apes. This Pyrrhola is a young male. He left his family several days ago. He now faces a difficult task, being adopted by a new group, and he's just discovered one. His fate will be decided here. However, each group has its own territory and intruders are rarely welcome. A young female and her infant. Mothers are especially wary, not easy to approach. Up there is an older female much easier to make contact with. A large male, clearly a dominant alpha male. He seems calm, but it is far too dangerous to approach. To be accepted, he must first be noticed. A tense moment. Has the young female picked up his scent? She's the most beautiful Pyrrhola he's ever seen. It seems to be going all right. It's another story with the alpha male. He could kill him, but for now, it's just physical intimidation. The young male's first attempt ends in failure, but his mood provokes an unexpected reaction. Our ancestors possessed a new quality, previously unknown in the animal kingdom, something shared by very few species: empathy, understanding the emotions of others. Even more extraordinarily, they're affected by the feelings of others. Sympathy. It's happening to the older female. She feels the distress of the young male and it makes her anxious. She must act. She wants to find out more about him. Empathy is a powerful force. It is the thing that allows us to live in a society today. Why does he need to be adopted by strangers? It relates to the social structure of Pyrrholas. The females never leave the group, while the males are forced to leave at adolescence. What do the old female's gestures mean? Will he be able to stay? Not yet. The young male keeps his distance. He needs to sleep. Most mammals only sleep for a few minutes at a time, not Pyrrholas. In terms of sleeping, they're revolutionaries. The Pyrrholas have come up with an extraordinary invention. They build nests in the treetops. However, It takes a long time to learn how to build a nest, and the only way to learn is from the mother. The young male always slept in his mother's nest. He still doesn't know how to make his own. Up here, Pyrolas are protected from predators, and their leaf mats stop them from falling. They can sleep all night without fear, long restorative nights. Thanks to the miracle of sleep, Pyrolas improve their mental faculties. Sleep allows our brains to sort information. Not all of it received during the day is useful. Our brain puts some in the trash and stores the essential parts in our memory. All that while we sleep. Remarkable. Pyrolas have passed this down to us. Without this invention, we could never have become humans. This morning the group has come down to the forest floor. The young male followed them. He wants to make contact with the group again. Pyrolas love the sweet taste of fruit, but they have an advantage over other species. Their stomachs can digest all sorts of food. Well, they still have their favourites. There they are. The young male has made his choice and will approach the older female. Out of all the different foods in the forest, some are highly poisonous. How do they know what is edible and what is poisonous? For Pyrolas, the answer is sharing experiences. The mother teaches her young how to choose and pick. This knowledge is passed from generation to generation, the beginning of a culture. The elder female can't leave her new contact. Like all Pyrolas, the young male knows how to give gifts, figs. Will she accept them? It's a good sign. Now we can begin the conversation. The language of the Pyrolas mainly consists of grooming. Grooming and caresses say far more than words. However, touching females in the group risks angering the alpha male. The females defend the young male against the alpha. Their numbers make them stronger. The alpha must back down. Among Pyrolas, the females have the power. The young male has taken an important step. He has become the old female's favourite. Now it's the female's turn to caress. Part of this seems like more than caressing. What exactly does she want? The young male has no experience of pleasure. To relax the atmosphere, Pyrolas have invented a totally new behaviour, laughing. This development, which resolves conflicts, is not a human invention, but an inheritance. Our ancestors lived in an earthly paradise. Fruit in abundance, fresh water available everywhere, and in all seasons. The only real dangers are the predators that roam the floor of the great forest. To detect them, Pyrolas read the signs of the forest. They have a deep understanding of their environment. The cry of a bird alerts them. The alarm sounds. A tiger. They have a different call for each threat. That means the alert is lifted. They can go back down. Pyrolas live in a golden age for the great apes, but this period of prosperity cannot last. Great upheavals on the horizon. Africa is on a collision course with Europe. Tectonic activity that will soon destroy the environment. The young male remains outside the group. He is cautious. The alpha is still dangerous. To be completely adopted, he needs the alpha's consent. He's perhaps not the best nest builder, but he comes from a group that knows how to catch tasty little insects, an amazing technique the golden-eyed female has never seen before. He uses the stick to catch termites. There is nothing tastier than termites. This invention is crucial. The stick is the first tool, an extension of the hand which allows us to perform new tasks, an idea that will be invaluable to us. They have understood. The young male is now the main attraction of the group. The infant is a victim of his greed. He forgot his mother's teaching and has been poisoned, a fate suffered so often by the young. The young male recognizes this poison. The Pyrolas already have some knowledge of the curative powers of plants. This knowledge varies between groups and allows them to cure some ailments. The young male seems to have some knowledge on this matter that the group does not. There are many different types. Plants that put tapeworms to sleep, plants covered in tiny spines that trap the sleeping worms. Pyrolas were herbalists. The tale of this young hero may seem secondary, but it tells another, more powerful story. The spread of knowledge. Societies that forced their young adults to leave possess this quality. The young depart with the knowledge of their group and transmit it to other groups. The infant is saved thanks to the young male. The young female has made her choice. He must become part of the group. It's her will against the alpha. Pyrola alpha males resist the pressure of the females as long as possible, but the females always win. The alpha can sense. From now on, the young male is part of the group. It's a sign. The earth is moving and the great period of climatic cooling is approaching. Our ancestors had to leave to escape this place, and so the great exodus begins. Africa is on a collision course with Europe. The climate of the planet is changing dramatically. The humid forests of Europe are disappearing. The same is happening in large parts of Asia, where the forests of China and Japan are fragmenting. The Asiatic great apes migrate towards South Asia. They give rise to the ancestors of the gibbons and the orangutans. The African continent has just closed the Strait of Gibraltar. Cut off from the water of the Atlantic, the Mediterranean dries out and becomes a Dead Sea. Pyrrolus and their relatives cross the dried Mediterranean. They migrate towards Africa, where the forest is spreading, notably on the vast green plains of the Sahara. Pyrrolus evolved and became a new species with new, more astonishing abilities. This new ancestor was called Sahelanthropus, or Tumai. Further south, we rejoin the path of our lineage, 7 million years later. Tumai lived on the shores of Lake Chad. They were probably our common ancestor with modern chimpanzees. Their inventions will make them amongst the most dangerous and intelligent species on the planet. With them, the march towards humanity gathers pace. Tumai still sleep in the trees, but have found plenty to do on the ground. A much more varied food supply, even if it's a little trickier to get to. The descendant of the young female is now a Tumai. Her appearance has changed, but she has kept her golden eyes passed down through her DNA. Her son still has much to learn. An infant's education now takes much longer. As well as knowing what to eat, he must learn how to eat it. Tumai use different tools for different foods, but mastering each tool takes hours of practice. Tumai try to benefit from all nature's gifts. The females have a greater practical instinct than the males. They imagine and invent new techniques. Tumai have also improved this strange way of getting around, walking on 2 feet. It has many advantages, such as being able to carry objects long distances. The descendant of the alpha still dominates the group. There have been considerable changes in our ancestors' social structure. Now the males have the power. There is a hierarchy, and the alpha knows it must be respected. He often feels the need to remind everyone. It's usually the weakest that feel his force. A society dominated by males is a never-ending series of rivalries. The alpha is a type of ultra-dominant male who always feels the need to show his force. Is this young one still alive? He's okay, just a bit shaken up. The alpha doesn't just rely on strength to stay on top. He builds friendships with several allies. He praises a male knowing he could be a threat one day. He sweet-talks the elder female. Her goodwill could come in useful. Alliances, strategies, betrayal, conquest and power. This type of society has given rise to a new activity, politics. The males spend most of their day plotting. It is left to the females to find ways to feed and educate their young. It's no wonder that females have become more resourceful than the males. To the alpha, ruling the group also means having access to the female. The problem with bipedalism is the male can't see the female's genitals as clearly. How does he know if she's interested? Before being able to mate, he now has to check the willingness of the female. She's not interested. The new territory of the Tumai includes water and all the food it contains. Our ancestors are just getting used to this new element and will encounter an abundance of riches. The Tumai's greatest invention, however, is preference. A male and a female can decide to get away from the group just to spend some time together. For these 2 juveniles, it's the first time, a big step in relationships between males and females. Before there was only sniffing, then mating. It only lasted a minute. Now they can spend time together and exchange gestures of affection. The great apes begin to feel their hearts beating, their hair standing on end. The great game of seduction. She seeks his gaze. He is transfixed. She smells him. They feel desire. They give kisses and invent a new way of mating face to face. No one has noticed that the infant has strayed from the bank. Too late. The little one's frail body is limp and lifeless. Tumai are well aware of the importance of the group. The loss of a member is heartbreaking. Life on the ground does have its advantages, but there are far more predators than in the canopy. That's why Tumai still depend on the trees. Something strange is happening in our ancestors' minds. The young female should have left the lifeless body behind, but she refused. Why? What does she feel? Something happened this morning. Several unknown individuals were spotted on the other side of the hill. The 3 males of the group are very excited. There under the large fig tree, another group of Tumai. The first time they've seen them, 2 very enticing females. They have been eating overripe figs and are now drunk. This group has come here for the fermented fruits that rot on the ground. The alpha wants the females. He wants what he sees, but they belong to other males, and he is an absolute giant. What can he do? A cunning plan is formulating inside the alpha's head. A previously unimagined idea. An idea that will make us the most dangerous predator on the planet. The idea is to kill. Killing one's own species. Killing with premeditation and in an organised way. Killing to take the goods of others. The Tumai have just invented war. They have conquered a new territory, and with it a tree full of fruit and a few females. War has its advantages. From now on, the alpha group will occupy this land. The young female still has a worrying connection to her infant. She's refusing to accept reality, because reality has become unbearable. The infant is motionless, but his body is still there. What is it that lives in us and vanishes so suddenly? Tumai are starting to understand the concept of death, the loss of life, the loss of a being. They know that their own lives will end. Faced with suffering and confusion, they gather around the body of their departed friend. Gathering, the feeling of being in a group, united in space and time, the beginning of a ritual, a first funeral ceremony. For many years we believed that awareness of death made us human. Not anymore. Today, we know that we share this knowledge with many other species, including chimpanzees. Awareness of the passage of time is a huge leap forward in our family history. 5 million years ago, Africa began to dry out. The great forests of the Sahara receded and placed pressure on the descendants of the Tumai. They separate into several families. Some evolve along the line of the chimpanzees and gorillas. They abandon bipedalism and invent a new way of getting around on 4 feet. Others evolve along the line of humans. They're spread throughout Africa, especially in the east. Here we find the great family of Australopithecus. Between 4 and 2 million years ago, there is a great diaspora, Afarensis, Abel, Africanus, Kenyanthropus, Anamensis, Gary. Around 2 million years ago, a new character appeared in South Africa. He would go on to radically alter our history. We named him Sediba. Is he an Australopithecus or the first man? That question hasn't yet been solved. Sediba lived in the south of the African continent. Drought increasingly affects this part of Africa and will play a considerable role in the development of our ancestors. Despite spending the majority of their time on the ground, Sediba are still dependent on the trees, the only protection from the man-eating beast that roamed the land at that time. They never stray too far. The dry season is at its peak. There's no more fruit on the trees. The only food is underground. Roots and bulbs are difficult to find and dig out of the ground, and they need a lot of chewing before they can be swallowed. However, that's all there is. Hours are spent chewing this tough food. This young male is still part of the group, though he has no female. The females now live in a harem with the strongest males. These 2 females are part of the alpha's harem. When a carcass is left by the larger predators, there's only enough for the alpha and his females. A few bones to suck, but only the strongest have access. That's why the females have accepted this new arrangement. Less power for more protection. Sediba don't live very long. This old female can no longer chew. The marrow is all she can swallow. The alpha doesn't share with the elders. The old female would already be dead without the young male. By chewing her food, he keeps her alive. Empathy at work again. This extreme scarcity of food is driving our species to extinction. If they don't find an alternative, they will all die. They must adapt. Fortunately, Sediba possesses a highly developed brain and an array of tools and techniques. Inside the brain of one of them, a revolutionary idea is taking shape. If the meat won't come to them, they will have to go to it. Over there. The alpha's female wants to take the risk. The young male is ready too. None before them have tried this. Against the wishes of the alpha, they will attempt the impossible. How can they be so foolish? Neither of them has ever been so far from the trees. They move cautiously, stepping away from the safety of their trees. Every rustle of the leaves, every unfamiliar noise sends a rush of anxiety through them. But the desperation for food is greater than their fear. They've never ventured so far from their home. The vast, unfamiliar land stretches before them, empty and barren except for the scattered patches of dry earth and the distant shimmer of water. The dry season has forced the land to give little. and their usual sources of sustenance are nowhere to be found. The young male feels a strange mix of excitement and fear as he follows the older female. He knows this journey could mean death, but it could also mean survival for them both. He glances back toward the familiar forest canopy, the place where he grew up, and wonders if he's making a huge mistake. They move forward, step by careful step, their eyes scanning the land for any sign of danger. Their bodies are tense with anticipation. After what seems like hours, they reach the edge of a large clearing where the dry earth meets a series of rocks, leading to a patch of scattered carcasses. This is where they hope to find the food they desperately need. It's a dangerous gamble. In the distance, they can see other predators circling, wary of intruders. The alpha's territory is vast and fiercely guarded, and any trespassers are met with hostility. But this is a new day, a day of change, a day where survival depends on innovation. The young male watches the female as she approaches the carcasses. Her movements are slow, calculated, her eyes constantly scanning for any danger. She's a seasoned survivor, and he follows her closely, trying to mimic her every move. But suddenly a rustling sound from behind them stops them both dead in their tracks. The young male's heart races as he instinctively looks toward the noise, his body tensing. Something is coming. A group of predators emerges from the shadows, their eyes gleaming with hunger. It's a pack of wild dogs, larger than anything they've encountered before. Their teeth are bared, and they're not here for small talk. They're here to kill. The female makes a quick decision, signaling for the young male to retreat. But it's too late. The dogs are closing in fast, their movements synchronized as they surround them. The young male's breath quickens. This is the moment he's feared, the moment when life and death collide. But before panic can fully set in, the older female takes the lead. With a swift motion, she grabs a long, sharp stick, the first weapon they've ever used, and thrusts it at the advancing dogs. The stick is crude, but it's enough to buy them some time. The wild dogs hesitate, startled by the unexpected defense. The young male watches, his mind racing. He's seen animals fight before, but this is different. This is not a fight for survival. It's a battle for control. The female stands firm, gripping the stick with all her strength, as the young male rushes to grab another weapon. A large rock that he hurls toward the pack is not enough to kill, but it's enough to force the dogs to scatter for a moment. In that brief moment of hesitation, the female leads the charge, pushing the young male toward the safety of the trees. Their escape is a blur of movement, adrenaline coursing through their bodies. They sprint toward the familiar forest, their hearts pounding in their chests. The young male's mind is spinning. This is survival, but it's also something else. The use of tools, the tactics, the strategy, all of these are new to them. They've crossed a line and they can never go back. They make it back to the safety of the trees, breathing heavily, their muscles sore from the sprint. The wild dogs are no longer in pursuit, but the danger still lingers. The young male looks at the female, his heart swelling with gratitude. She saved him. She taught him. In that moment, he understands something that changes everything. Survival is not just about strength. It's about innovation. It's about using the resources around you to adapt and overcome. As they settle into the trees, the young male looks out across the land. He feels a sense of connection to the vast, changing world around him. He realizes that this is just the beginning. The world is evolving, and so are they. As the days pass, the young male and the older female begin to develop a deeper understanding of their environment. Their new routine becomes one of constant adaptation. They have ventured farther than their ancestors ever dared, and with each new challenge they learn more. The young male now knows the value of tools, how to use them to secure food, defend themselves, and navigate their harsh world. They are not simply surviving, they are evolving. One evening, while resting in the safety of their tree nest, the young male hears a rustling sound nearby. He tenses instinctively, but this time it isn't a predator. It's another group of Tumai, a smaller group, but their presence is a significant change. The young male's heart races. He knows that encounters with other groups can be dangerous, but curiosity gets the better of him. As he watches, the young male notices something that sends a shiver down his spine, a strange, unfamiliar scent. It's a male, and his posture is confident, even aggressive. The young male isn't sure if it's a threat, but he can sense that this encounter will test him in ways he hasn't experienced before. The alpha male of their group watches the scene unfold from a distance, his eyes narrowing. He's aware of the young male's hesitation, and a subtle sense of tension hangs in the air. It's clear that the alpha male has not forgotten the previous challenges to his authority, and he doesn't take kindly to the idea of sharing his territory or leadership. In a low voice, the older female speaks, her tone calm but firm. "Do not let him test you," she warns. "We are not yet ready to face him in a contest of strength, but we have learned other ways." Her words resonate deeply within the young male. In this new world of survival, strength is important, but it is no longer the only key to dominance. The ability to think strategically, to outwit your opponent, and to find alternative ways to solve problems. These are the traits that will define the future of their species. The encounter with the rival group unfolds without violence, but the unease lingers. The young male and the older female stay close to their nest, watching the group from a safe distance. There is no direct confrontation, but the interaction serves as a reminder of how fragile their place in this new world is. The young male realizes that the power struggles of their species are just beginning, and what once was a peaceful existence in the trees will soon be a battleground for control and survival. Over the following days, the young male continues to grow. He practices using his newfound tools with greater precision and skill, learning the subtlety and finesse required to hunt small prey and protect himself. He watches the interactions between the group and notices the growing tensions among the males. The alpha male seems increasingly paranoid, always watching the young male closely, as if waiting for a misstep. One day, while foraging for food, the young male stumbles upon a discovery that will change everything. He finds a small, clear stream, an unexpected source of water in the middle of their territory. His heart races with excitement. This is an opportunity for their group, a source of sustenance that could tip the balance in their favour. But it is also a delicate secret. The young male knows that if he reveals this discovery too soon, the alpha male will claim it as his own, as he does with everything else. For a moment, the young male is torn. Should he share the discovery with the group or keep it to himself? He knows that to survive in this world, one must sometimes withhold information to gain an advantage. The lessons of strategy are becoming clearer to him with each passing day. As he approaches the stream, he notices the older female's eyes watching him from the trees. She's seen the stream too. She doesn't say anything, but her gaze is filled with understanding. She knows that this is a turning point, not just for the young male, but for the entire group. The decisions they make now will shape the future of their species. The young male takes a deep breath and steps into the stream, letting the cool water rush over his hands. He smiles to himself, knowing that the world they are forging is no longer about brute strength. It's about the ability to adapt, to use what's around them, and to navigate the delicate balance between cooperation and competition. They will need each other more than ever in the days to come. As he returns to the group, he does not immediately reveal the stream. Instead, he waits for the right moment. He watches the alpha male as he prowls around the group, flexing his muscles and asserting his dominance. But the young male sees through it now. The alpha male is not invincible. He's just a brute, relying on fear to maintain control. The young male knows that real power lies in knowledge, in strategy, and in the ability to think beyond immediate conflicts. That evening, as the group gathers in their tree nest, the young male shares the discovery with the older female in quiet conversation. She listens intently, nodding in agreement. The time to reveal the stream will come, but it must be done carefully, with precision. The young male now understands the importance of patience. Survival is not just about finding food, it's about timing, alliances, and the quiet manipulation of the environment. As they sleep that night, the young male dreams of a future where power is no longer defined by physical strength, but by intelligence, cooperation, and the willingness to take risks. He sees a world where their species can thrive, not just by competing with others, but by working together to overcome the challenges of their environment. But in the back of his mind, there is a growing awareness. The world they are building is fragile. The struggle for dominance is inevitable, and the young male must be ready to face it. even if it means challenging the very forces that have shaped his life so far. The next day, the young male can't shake the feeling that the calm of the forest is only an illusion. His instincts tell him that the days of peace are numbered, and that the time for action is fast approaching. He watches the alpha male with more scrutiny now. There is no mistaking it. The alpha's power is waning. His position, once unchallenged, is being subtly undermined. The younger males in the group begin to question his leadership, whispering among themselves when they think the alpha can't hear. As the sun begins to set, the group gathers beneath the trees for their evening rest. The young male knows that tonight could be the turning point. The time has come for him to make his move. He approaches the older female, the one who had taught him the value of patience and strategy. She meets his gaze, her expression unreadable. She knows the game as well as he does. She doesn't speak, but there's an understanding between them. Tonight they will make their move. The night is quiet, save for the sounds of insects and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. The young male keeps his eyes on the alpha, who seems unusually distracted tonight. Perhaps it is the growing tension within the group. Perhaps it is the realization that his grip on power is slipping. Whatever it is, it works in the young male's favor. The older female gestures for the young male to follow her. They move quietly, carefully, keeping to the shadows, away from the other members of the group. The young male's heart beats faster now, his breath steady as he prepares himself for what's to come. They arrive at the edge of the group's territory, near the newly discovered stream. The older female looks around, her golden eyes scanning the surroundings. She nods to the young male, signalling that the time is right. He steps forward, his senses heightened. The air feels charged, as if the forest itself is holding its breath. The alpha male, distracted and unaware of their presence, continues to prowl in the opposite direction. The young male knows this is the moment to act. With a quick calculated movement, the young male begins to lead the group toward the stream where the water flows freely. He makes sure to appear casual, as if this is simply another part of their routine. The older female follows closely, her gaze never straying from the path ahead. They are silent, moving as one. The only sound the faint rustling of leaves beneath their feet. As they approach the stream, the young male feels a sense of purpose he's never experienced before. This is no longer just about survival. This is about change. This is about proving that the old ways, reliant on brute strength and dominance, no longer define the future. They're about to create something new, something that transcends the simple power struggles that have shaped their world so far. When they reach the water, the young male pauses for a moment. He looks back toward the group, now gathered under the watchful eye of the alpha. He knows that what happens next will determine the course of their future. The time for subtlety is over. He steps into the stream, splashing the water lightly to catch the attention of the others. The first to approach is one of the younger males, intrigued by the sight of the fresh water. He steps carefully into the stream, testing the waters with one foot then the other. Soon the others follow, eager for the discovery of this new resource. The young male watches, his heart pounding as the group begins to gather around the stream. It's then that the alpha male notices. He watches from a distance, his eyes narrowing as he assesses the situation. The young male feels a surge of adrenaline. This is it, the moment of truth. The alpha approaches, his steps slow but purposeful. There is no mistaking the challenge in his eyes. He moves toward the young male, his large frame casting a shadow over the stream. The young male stands tall, not backing down. He meets the alpha's gaze, unflinching. This is no longer about dominance, this is about respect. This is about taking control of their future. The alpha stops just short of the water, his chest rising and falling with each breath. For a long moment, the two males stand facing each other, locked in a silent battle of wills. The group watches in tense anticipation. It is clear that this moment will define who leads them into the future. Finally, the alpha male steps back. The tension in the air dissipates, replaced by a quiet understanding. The young male has done it. He has proven that he's not just a follower, but a leader in his own right. The alpha's position, once unassailable, has been challenged. And for the first time, the young male feels the weight of that power shift in his favour. The older female steps forward, joining the young male at the edge of the stream. She places a gentle hand on his shoulder, a gesture of solidarity. The young male nods, knowing that this is just the beginning. There is still much to be done, many challenges ahead, but tonight they have made their stand. They have taken the first step toward a new future. The group gathers around, their murmurs a mix of awe and curiosity. The younger males, once loyal to the alpha, now look to the young male with newfound respect. The older females, once protective of their roles, now see the young male as a potential ally, someone who can lead them into a new era. The young male smiles to himself. The path ahead is uncertain, but he knows one thing for sure. This is the moment they begin to build something greater than themselves. It is the moment that will define not just their survival, but their place in the world. And as the night falls over the forest, the young male and the older female stand together, ready to face whatever comes next. As the night deepens, the air grows colder, and the stars above shine brightly in the vast expanse of the sky. The group, now more unified, settles around the stream, each member feeling the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The young male can feel the change in the air. This is no longer just a forest filled with danger and instinct. It has become a place of potential where the old ways of power are being rewritten, one decision at a time. The following morning, the young male is up before the others. His mind races with possibilities. He has secured a place for himself among the group, but now he must navigate the complex relationships that will determine the future of the family. He knows that the alpha male's challenge wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The alpha had always ruled through fear, through brute strength, but the young male now understands something more profound. Leadership comes not from the display of power, but from the ability to inspire and unite. The sun rises slowly, casting a soft golden light over the treetops. The young male watches as the group begins to stir. They're quieter today, as if they sense that something has shifted. The older female is the first to approach him, her golden eyes glimmering with approval. She is a silent force in the group, strong in her wisdom and experience, and her gestures now carry more weight than they ever did before. "Today we move forward," she says simply. There is no need for elaboration. She knows that the young male understands the weight of her words. She's always been one to see the potential in others, and she sees something in him now, something that cannot be ignored. The young male nods. "We must build something lasting, something beyond what we've known," he replies, his voice steady. "It feels right. This feels like the first true step towards something greater than the mere survival. It feels like progress." The group begins to move, and the young male leads them toward the heart of the forest. They have stayed near the stream for long enough, and now it's time to expand, to explore new territories. As they travel, the young male feels the weight of their eyes on him. They look to him now, not with the uncertainty of the past, but with a new respect, a new hope. The journey is slow, but the pace feels purposeful. They move through the thick underbrush, the sound of their feet crunching on the leaves, the only noise breaking the silence. The young male leads them across rivers, through dense foliage, and into new areas filled with unfamiliar sights and smells. The world is vast, and they are only beginning to understand the scope of what lies before them. They encounter other groups along the way, some friendly, some not. But each encounter teaches the young male something valuable. He learns how to negotiate, how to form alliances, and just as importantly, how to stand his ground when necessary. The forest is full of life, but it is also full of threats. The young male has learned that every encounter is an opportunity to either grow stronger or become weaker, and he will not allow himself to become weak. As they travel deeper into the forest, they discover new food sources, and for the first time, the group is able to feast in abundance. The young male watches as the others eat, their bellies full and their spirits lifted. For the first time, they feel like more than just survivors. They feel like a community, and that, he realizes, is what will set them apart from every other creature in the forest. Their ability to work together, to adapt, to build something lasting. Days pass, and as the young male grows more accustomed to his leadership role, he begins to shape the future of the group. He encourages them to continue pushing forward, to explore new territories, to never settle for what they already know. He understands that survival is no longer enough. They must evolve. They must adapt to the changing world around them. and for that they need each other. As time goes on, the young male continues to grow. He learns from his mistakes, from the challenges he faces, and from the lessons that life in the forest has to offer. He becomes not just a leader, but a symbol of what is possible when determination and unity combine. And though the alpha male remains a presence in the group, the young male's influence begins to overshadow the old ways of power. One evening, as the sun sets and the forest is bathed in the warm golden light of dusk, the young male sits with the older female by the fire. The group rests behind them, their voices low and content as they share the spoils of the day. "You've done well," the older female says, her voice soft but filled with pride. The young male nods, looking out into the distance. "We've all done well, but we have much more to do." And so, under the watchful gaze of the stars, the young male and his group continue their journey, ever forward, ever evolving, ever building. The future is uncertain, but one thing is clear: they will face it together. The days of the alpha's dominance are over. A new era has begun, one where cooperation, understanding, and progress are the guiding forces. The young male has not only secured his place in the group, but he has also set the course for the generations to come. The dawn of human history. The early chapters of human history are far from the simple stories we imagine. Long before the cities, empires, or even the first words were spoken, there were creatures. Creatures much like ourselves, but not quite yet human. It all began 25 million years ago, when a new species appeared on Earth. These were the great apes. Among them was one family whose extraordinary abilities would eventually lead to something far greater: our ancestors. They lived in the trees, they ruled the forests, and over millions of years they gave rise to new, more advanced species. They invented tools, learned to hunt, and eventually discovered fire. But before all of that, there was the first spark, the first breath of life. Their story begins in the misty jungles of ancient Africa, a land teeming with creatures large and small, predator and prey alike. At this time, the Earth was in a state of great change. The vast Tethys Ocean was fragmenting and the landscape was shifting. Tropical forests spread northward from Africa as global temperatures rose, creating ideal conditions for the rise of new life. It was into this world that our ancestors were born. The first of these ancient creatures was not like us, but a distant cousin in the vast tree of life. Gigantopithecus, Ramapithecus, and Sivapithecus were among the earliest great apes. They stretched across the land from Europe to modern-day China. This was the age of the planet of the apes. But which of these ancient apes would be the one to leave a mark on history? The answer lies with Pyrrholopithecus. 13 million years ago, in the Mediterranean coast of what is now modern-day Spain, lived a creature unlike any other, the Pyrrholopithecus. This incredible ape was the origin of our family, the beginning of what would eventually lead to us, Homo sapiens. Pyrrholopithecus was not just another ape. This species had exceptional abilities. Unlike the other creatures in the jungle, it could walk on two legs, upright, even though it mostly lived in the trees. Bipedalism, once thought to be a uniquely human trait, had its origins here with the apes. This small young male Pyrrholopithecus had no idea of the profound role he would play in the great story of human evolution. It was a young male, recently separated from his group, who would soon face a significant challenge, being accepted into a new clan. As he ventured into the unknown, the fate of the species would hinge on a single moment of contact. In the dense forest, there was another group of Pyrrholopithecus, and though they shared the same roots, each group fiercely defended their territory. This young male needed to find a way in. As the young male approached the group, there was an older female with whom he could make contact. The challenge lay not in meeting the older female, but in how to win the approval of the group's leader, the alpha male. This was no easy task. The young male, though capable of walking upright, would need to prove his worth, his strength, and his usefulness. The alpha male's physical intimidation was palpable, but it was not only physical strength that would determine the outcome. The true test was empathy. Empathy, an emotion so deeply embedded in the human psyche, was already present in these early ancestors. As the young male approached the older female, he began to display signs of understanding, of connecting on an emotional level. This was new. The Pyrrholopithecus did not just act out of instinct. They began to respond to each other's feelings, to care for one another. The older female, sensing the young male's distress and the vulnerability of the moment, felt a shift in her own emotions. She felt sympathy, something that transcended the basic needs of survival. The young male, though still an outsider, found his place through this newfound bond of empathy. It was a new dimension to life, one that would eventually pave the way for cooperation, social bonds, and the creation of societies. But it wasn't just the ability to communicate that made these early ancestors special. The young male's survival in this group was not secured solely by emotional bonds, it was secured through innovation. In the quest for survival, the Pyrrholopithecus were using their intelligence to adapt and improve their environment. The young male had learned how to use tools, stones to break open tough roots, and these tools were now being used in new ways. The young male, emboldened by his success in gaining acceptance, would bring the group closer to something truly groundbreaking, the discovery of tools. Tools were not simply an extension of the hands, but a leap forward in cognitive development. With tools, the Pyrrholopithecus could do things they had never done before. They could break apart the tough hides of animals, crack open bones, and dig deep into the earth for roots and tubers. This was the dawn of a new age for our ancestors. But with this leap forward came the need for something more. It wasn't enough to simply survive in the trees. They needed to venture out into the wider world. It was during this transition that the ultimate question of human existence would begin to form. What would they sacrifice for survival? The young male and his group made a bold decision to leave the safety of the trees and explore the dangers of the open savanna. The world outside the trees was dangerous, but the rewards were great. There was an abundance of food, but it was also filled with new dangers, the kind of dangers that would force them to adapt and evolve in ways they could not have anticipated. This was the first true test of humanity's spirit. Would they retreat back to the safety of the trees, or would they risk it all for the chance to thrive in the open world? The answer came in the form of a decision made by the youngest members of the group. The older generations, those who had lived in the trees their whole lives, were reluctant to leave, but the younger ones were filled with a spirit of adventure. They saw beyond the dangers and into the promise of a new world. In the savannah, they faced new challenges. Predators roamed the land, and the young male soon realized that surviving on the ground was far different than surviving in the safety of the treetops. Yet, it was there, on the open plain, that the Pyrrholopithecus encountered something that would change their lives forever. Meat. For the first time, they learned how to scavenge from the carcasses left behind by the great predators of the savannah. It was a breakthrough. The young male had taught the group how to find food, and now they were learning how to process it. The most valuable parts of the carcasses were the fat, the marrow, and the organs. These parts were rich in energy and nutrients, providing the young males and females with the sustenance they needed to survive. But as they grew stronger, their social structure began to evolve. The alpha male, once the undisputed leader, began to feel the threat of the younger males. As they learned new ways of hunting, scavenging, and surviving, the dominance of the older males began to diminish. The alpha's physical strength was no longer enough to maintain control. It was time for a new leader, one who could lead with intelligence and innovation. The young male, now seasoned and wiser, had a vision for the future of his species. He recognized the power of tools, of fire, and of cooperation. His ideas would change the course of history. Through trial and error, through struggle and sacrifice, the Pyrrholopithecus began to evolve into something greater. The first sparks of humanity were beginning to flicker in the hearts and minds of our ancestors. They weren't just apes anymore. They were something new, something that would one day become us, the birth of innovation, a new path. As the journey of the Pyrrholopithecus unfolds, the real story of human evolution begins to emerge. The new experiences of hunting, scavenging, and survival would not only change their physicality, but also their very way of thinking. The once simple creatures, living only for the moment, were now beginning to understand something more profound, the ability to plan, to imagine, and to create. These skills would serve as the foundation for all the human advancements that would follow. The young male who had first discovered the art of cutting meat and breaking bones with rocks became the first teacher of the group. Through his actions, he began to show them that survival required not just physical strength, but also knowledge. Knowledge that could be passed down through generations. This was the birth of education, the first spark of culture. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about learning and passing that knowledge on. At first, the tools they made were crude. Sharp rocks to slice meat, sticks to dig and probe. Yet over time, these tools began to evolve. The sharpness of the rocks improved, and the tools became more sophisticated. What began as simple stone tools grew into the beginnings of something much larger, the advent of human technology. These tools allowed them to do more than simply survive. They began to dominate their environment, reshaping it in ways no other species had ever done before. The importance of this innovation cannot be overstated. For the first time in history, a species was able to manipulate its environment not just for survival, but for progress. The ability to create tools, to design solutions to complex problems, was the key that unlocked the future of humanity. It was this skill, the ability to make and use tools, that set the Pyrrholopithecus apart from every other creature on Earth. But with innovation came change. The social structure of the group began to shift. As the young males learned new techniques and became more resourceful, the alpha male's dominance started to crumble. His brute strength, once the defining feature of his rule, was no longer enough to maintain control over the group. It was the young males, armed with their knowledge and tools, who began to rise. The alpha's power was being replaced by something much more powerful: intelligence. The alpha male realized that his physical power could not last forever, and he knew that in this new world he had to adapt. But adapting meant accepting that his reign was over. The young males, once seen as nothing more than reckless challengers to the alpha's throne, now held the keys to the future. The ability to create, to strategize, and to innovate made them the new leaders of the group. This was the beginning of the end for the era of brute strength. The rise of intelligence over physical power marked a critical turning point in human history. The young males didn't just fight for survival anymore. They fought for the future of their species. With their newfound skills, they could create and design solutions to problems. They were no longer bound by the constraints of their environment. They could change it. Yet even with these advancements, life was still precarious. The savannah was full of predators, and the young male, now a leader in his own right, knew that the next step was to move beyond the limitations of the present. The Pyrrholopithecus had learned to survive, but now they needed to thrive. This drive for progress would soon push them into new territories that would forever change their destiny. The great question of whether to stay in the safety of the trees or to venture out into the vast unknown would once again come to the forefront. It was a decision that would define the course of human history. The young male now had a vision. He believed that if they could adapt to the new challenges of the open plains, they would unlock a future beyond anything they could imagine. He wasn't content with simply surviving. He wanted to conquer, to expand, and to create. He dreamed of a life where the Pyrrholopithecus could live not just in the trees, but in the open land, where food was abundant and the possibilities were endless. But this vision came at a cost. The savannah was a dangerous place, a place where predators roamed freely, yet it was also a place filled with opportunity. The young male could see that if they learned to live in the open plains, they would unlock new resources, new ways of life, and new challenges. The decision to leave the trees was one that would require great courage, but it was also a decision that would drive the species forward. Some of the group, the more cautious members, resisted this change. They feared the unknown, the dangers of the open land. They were hesitant to leave the safety of the trees, but the young male knew that without risk, there could be no reward. The future of their species depended on their ability to adapt and change. The decision was made. The group would leave the trees behind and venture into the savannah. It was a moment of great significance, the first step into a new world. But it was also a moment of great danger. The savannah was not a safe place, and the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. As the Pyrrholopithecus left the safety of their treetop homes, They stepped into a world of vast grasslands and open spaces. They were now exposed to the elements, to predators, and to the unknown. But they were also exposed to the potential for greatness. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape. The first few days were difficult. The group had to learn how to navigate this new world, how to find food, and how to defend themselves against the dangers that lurked at every corner. They used the tools they had crafted, but the challenges were immense. They were no longer just scavengers. They had to become hunters, gatherers, and survivors in a much more complex world. Despite the hardships, the young male remained optimistic. He saw potential in the savannah, potential for a new life, a life of abundance. He taught the group how to hunt, how to track prey, and how to make the most of the land. Over time, the group began to thrive. They learned to adapt to their new environment, using their tools to gather food, protect themselves, and build shelters. And so, the story of human evolution continued. With each new step, the Pyrrholopithecus grew stronger, smarter, and more capable. They had crossed the threshold from survival to progress. They were no longer just a species of apes living in the trees. They had become something new, something greater. They had become the ancestors of humanity, the expanding horizons of Homo erectus, a new dawn. The decision to leave the safety of the trees had irrevocably changed the fate of the Pyrrholopithecus. They were no longer simply creatures of habit, bound by the natural limits of the forests. Instead, they were now explorers, pioneers carving out their place in an ever-expanding world. As the young male led them further into the savannah, the group's understanding of survival deepened, evolving into a more sophisticated way of life. This marked the true beginning of humanity's journey. It was not just about finding food anymore. It was about mastering the land, understanding it, shaping it, and ultimately dominating it. The open plains with their endless horizons were a canvas for the group to make their mark. And with each new challenge they learned to adapt, each lesson building upon the last. As they became more comfortable in the savannah, the Pyrrholopithecus began to innovate in ways that were unimaginable before. The young male's leadership and vision began to take shape, guiding the group to new heights of ingenuity. They crafted better tools, invented new ways of hunting, and even started to build more complex shelters that could protect them from the elements and predators alike. But there was one key breakthrough that would define the future of human evolution: fire. The discovery of fire was not a single event, but rather a slow, gradual process. The first flames were accidental, sparked by lightning strikes or friction between stones. But once the group saw the power of fire, its warmth, its light, and its ability to cook food, they realized that it was the key to their survival and progress. At first, fire was used only to cook food, but it soon became a tool for transformation. With fire, they could heat their tools, make them sharper and more effective. They could create light in the darkness and keep predators at bay. Fire was the gateway to an entirely new world of possibilities. It was the beginning of a new era. The emergence of fire also sparked a revolution in the social structure of the group. As the young male had predicted, it was the ability to adapt and innovate that separated the strong from the weak. The once dominant alpha male, who had ruled through physical strength, now found himself outpaced by the ingenuity of the younger males, who had learned to use tools, fire, and strategy to their advantage. The alpha's power waned, and with it the old social order began to crumble. The new world they inhabited was not without its dangers, however. The savannah was full of carnivores, predators that hunted relentlessly. The Pyrrholopithecus, though now capable of using tools and fire, were still vulnerable, but they were learning, and they were learning fast. The young male's leadership continued to inspire the group to push forward, and they soon found ways to navigate the savannah with increasing confidence. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about thriving. The group had learned to find food, build shelters, and defend themselves. They had begun to create a society, a community of individuals who could work together to achieve common goals. They were no longer solitary creatures. They had become a tribe, bound together by their shared knowledge and survival instincts. As the group continued to grow and evolve, they eventually came into contact with other groups of Homo erectus. The encounters were initially tense. The competition for resources was fierce, and the young males, driven by the same desire for power and leadership, often found themselves clashing with rival groups. But over time, something remarkable happened. The groups began to learn from one another. They shared knowledge, exchanged tools, and formed alliances. The idea of cooperation began to take hold. This cooperation, however, was not without its challenges. The rise of Homo erectus marked the beginning of what we now recognise as the early foundations of politics and social organisation. The struggle for dominance remained, but it was no longer solely about brute strength. It was about strategy, negotiation, and alliances. The strong still dominated, but now the clever had just as much power. As Homo erectus continued to spread across the globe, their way of life began to evolve. They adapted to new climates, learned to use different resources, and developed new technologies. But even as they spread out from their African homeland, they faced a new set of challenges: the Ice Age. The cold, harsh winters of the northern regions presented a threat to their survival. Yet, as they had done before, Homo erectus found ways to adapt. They began to build more sophisticated shelters, using animal hides and other materials to protect themselves from the elements. The Ice Age brought with it new opportunities as well. The frozen landscapes provided a wealth of resources, new animals to hunt, new plants to gather, and new territories to explore. Homo erectus continued to evolve, developing larger brains, more advanced tools, and more complex social structures. But despite all their advances, Homo erectus was not alone in the world. Other species of humans, including the Neanderthals and Denisovans, began to emerge. These early humans were just as capable, if not more so, in certain ways. But Homo erectus, with its adaptability, creativity, and ability to innovate, would ultimately prove to be the most successful of all. The story of Homo erectus is the story of humanity itself. It is the story of a species that started as scavengers, then became hunters, and eventually learned to shape the world around them. It is the story of a species that, through its ability to adapt and innovate, went from being a small band of creatures in the savannah to a dominant force on the planet. As Homo erectus continued to evolve, they would eventually give rise to Homo sapiens, modern humans. But the legacy of Homo erectus, their innovations, their tools, their social structures, and their spirit of cooperation would live on in the DNA of every human being that followed. In a way, Homo erectus was the first true human. They were the ones who made the leap from survival to progress. They were the ones who learned to adapt, to innovate, and to create. And it is through their efforts that we as modern humans owe our existence. The evolution of Homo erectus, mastery over Earth. As Homo erectus ventured further into the unknown, they not only adapted to new environments but began to reshape them to suit their needs. The vast savannah, once a seemingly hostile world, became a territory they learned to navigate and conquer. They discovered the power of collective action, as each individual in the group played a vital role. Their innovations, born out of necessity, led them to develop tools that would transform their way of life. One of the most significant milestones in this journey was the invention of weapons and hunting strategies. Homo erectus had already mastered the art of scavenging, but now they turned to hunting. The introduction of spears and sharpened stones gave them the edge over larger predators, allowing them to take down prey that was once out of reach. This marked the beginning of what we now consider organised hunting. Groups of Homo erectus coordinating efforts, surrounding and capturing large game. Their hunting tactics were not just about strength, they relied heavily on cooperation and strategy. The young male, who had once led the charge for survival, became instrumental in developing hunting plans. He understood that to thrive, they would need to outsmart their prey. The key to success lay in collaboration. When hunting, the group worked as a cohesive unit, each member playing a specific role. The males, with their physical strength, would corner the prey, while the females and younger individuals acted as drivers, guiding the animals toward the trap. The newfound success in hunting provided them with an abundance of food, which was crucial for their survival. It also opened the door to another critical development: social structure. With more food, there was less competition within the group. The traditional hierarchy based on physical strength was beginning to shift. The group was no longer led solely by the strongest male, but by the most capable leader. Intelligence, foresight, and the ability to make crucial decisions became just as important as brute force. However, not all were pleased with this shift in power. The once dominant alpha male, though still a formidable force, found his authority slipping away. The young male, now a respected leader, challenged the old ways. He introduced new systems that prioritized collaboration, knowledge sharing, and forward thinking. These systems allowed the group to not only survive, but thrive in a world that was rapidly changing. Homo erectus was evolving. Their societies became more complex, and with complexity came new challenges. Conflicts arose within the group, as different individuals vied for power and status. The once simple existence of Homo erectus was now riddled with the complexities of leadership, trust, and betrayal. But with these challenges came the opportunities for growth. Homo erectus began to develop the first forms of social contracts, rules, unspoken agreements, and codes of behaviour that helped maintain order within the group. The advent of language played a crucial role in this transformation. As Homo erectus honed their ability to communicate, they began to form deeper connections. Words allowed them to share experiences, pass down knowledge, and create plans. No longer were they limited to simple gestures or vocalizations. Now, they could discuss strategies, argue, and negotiate. This development set them apart from the other animals that roamed the earth. Language was not just a tool for communication, it was a tool for innovation. It allowed the members of the group to express complex ideas and share those ideas with others. The young male, once a visionary for the group, used language to inspire and lead. He communicated his plans, described his dreams, and persuaded others to follow him. Through his words, the group transformed from a collection of individuals into a cohesive society. As Homo erectus ventured further into the world, they faced new environmental challenges. The Ice Age, with its extreme temperatures and shifting landscapes, posed a serious threat. Yet, Homo erectus showed their adaptability once again. They built shelters that protected them from the cold, developed clothing made from animal skins, and learned to hunt new prey. They navigated the frozen plains, relying on their newly developed tools to survive. One of the most significant aspects of their survival was their ability to create fire. Fire was not just a means of warmth, it was a symbol of their ingenuity. With fire, they could cook their food, sterilize their tools, and keep predators at bay. It was through the mastery of fire that Homo erectus proved they were not just survivors, but creators of their own fate. As Homo erectus continued to adapt, their physical appearance also began to change. The harsh climates they encountered led to the development of thicker skin, broader bodies, and larger brains. These physical adaptations allowed them to thrive in environments that were once inhospitable. The development of a larger brain was particularly important. It marked the beginning of true cognitive evolution. Homo erectus became capable of abstract thought, planning, and creativity, qualities that would define humanity for millennia to come. Their journey took them beyond Africa, spreading across Europe and Asia. They encountered new species, including the Neanderthals, and interacted with them in ways that influenced their evolution. In some regions, Homo erectus intermingled with other hominids, leaving behind traces of genetic material that would shape the future of human evolution. The migration of Homo erectus across the globe was not just a physical journey, it was a cultural one as well. As they settled in new lands, they adapted to the local environments, creating distinct cultures and societies. These early humans became masters of survival, capable of overcoming the challenges posed by each new environment they encountered. Despite the advances made by Homo erectus, they were not immune to extinction. Over time, they were replaced by more advanced species, most notably Homo sapiens. However, the legacy of Homo erectus lived on in the genes of every human being alive today. They were the bridge between the ancient apes and modern humans. They laid the foundation for everything that would come after. Their story is one of resilience, innovation, and adaptation. It is the story of a species that learned to shape its environment, to work together, and to imagine a better future. The journey of Homo erectus is a testament to the power of evolution and the ability of humanity to overcome even the most daunting challenges. Homo erectus, the age of mastery. As the descendants of Homo erectus spread across the world, they began to leave behind more than just tools or shelters. They started creating stories, passing down their wisdom, struggles, and triumphs through oral traditions. These stories, though simple at first, would lay the groundwork for the rich tapestry of myths and legends that would follow. In the vast plains of Africa, Homo erectus continued to thrive, each group adapting to the new realities of their environment. Some learned to follow migrating herds of animals, hunting them for food, while others took to the rivers and coasts, becoming adept fishermen. Their relationship with nature was one of mutual respect, taking only what was needed to survive and always moving in search of new opportunities for food, shelter, and growth. As the climates shifted, Homo erectus faced new challenges. The once temperate climate began to cool, forcing them to adapt to colder conditions. The thick fur and skins of animals became vital in protecting them from the harsh cold, and their ingenuity grew to new heights as they created more complex structures to keep out the cold. They built more sophisticated shelters, crafted better tools, and developed strategies for coping with the colder, harsher winters. Through all this, Homo erectus developed a unique ability to not only survive but thrive in the most diverse environments. They did not simply adapt to the changing world, they shaped it to suit their needs. The use of fire was pivotal. Not only did fire provide warmth and light, but it was also a tool that allowed Homo erectus to cook their food. The significance of cooking food cannot be overstated. It made nutrients more accessible, allowed them to process new types of food, and even contributed to the development of their brains. Cooking, in essence, was a catalyst for the brain growth that would later define Homo sapiens. It enabled Homo erectus to conserve energy by reducing the effort required to chew and digest food. Their teeth became smaller and their jaws less powerful, while their brains grew larger. This process, which took hundreds of thousands of years, set Homo erectus on a path that would eventually lead to the emergence of modern humans. It was during these formative years that Homo erectus also began to explore the deeper aspects of their existence. They began to form more complex social structures, and with this came the first signs of culture. The use of art, such as painting on cave walls or carving simple symbols, began to emerge as a form of expression. These early forms of art were not merely for decoration but held meaning. They were an attempt to make sense of the world around them, to communicate with each other, and to connect with something greater than themselves. This cultural development was inextricably linked to their expanding communication abilities. Homo erectus began to develop more sophisticated language skills. They could now communicate more clearly and express ideas in ways that went beyond basic survival needs. This language allowed them to share stories, discuss their plans, and pass on knowledge to future generations. Their world was changing, and so were they. As Homo erectus migrated into new regions, they encountered new challenges. The arrival of new predators, unfamiliar climates, and unknown threats shaped their evolution. But with each challenge, they grew stronger. They became more adept at working together, forming alliances and utilizing their intelligence to solve complex problems. Despite the growing complexity of their societies, Homo erectus still had much to learn. Their tools, while revolutionary for their time, were not perfect. They needed to develop more advanced tools to keep up with the demands of their changing world. They began to craft better stone tools, including scrapers, hammers, and axes, which allowed them to cut through tougher materials and build even more elaborate structures. As they mastered their environment, Homo erectus also began to explore the very concept of time. They became aware of the cycles of nature, the changing seasons, the movements of the stars, and the passage of days and years. This awareness gave rise to the first rudimentary forms of agriculture, as they began to cultivate the land around them and plant crops for future consumption. They learned how to store food, build sustainable shelters, and plan for the future. This new era marked a turning point in human history. Homo erectus had evolved from simple scavengers to highly skilled hunters, gatherers, and thinkers. They had begun to understand the world in a deeper way, and their newfound ability to shape their environment would eventually lead to the birth of civilization. The story of Homo erectus is one of resilience, innovation, and survival. It is a story that reminds us of our shared history and the long, arduous journey that has brought humanity to where we are today. Their legacy lives on in every aspect of our lives, from the tools we use to the language we speak, from the art we create to the stories we tell. As we look back on the history of Homo erectus, we realise that they were not just survivors, they were pioneers, explorers, and dreamers. They shaped the world in ways that were unimaginable to their ancestors and laid the groundwork for the future generations that would follow. Their journey was not just about survival, but about creating a world that could sustain them and future generations. The dawn of Homo sapiens, a new era, Homo erectus, with all its innovations and advancements, eventually gave way to the next phase of human evolution, Homo sapiens. While Homo erectus had mastered the art of survival, Homo sapiens would take that mastery to new heights. With a larger brain, more complex language, and advanced tools, Homo sapiens would begin to build societies, create civilizations, and shape the course of history in ways that Homo erectus could never have imagined. The journey from Homo erectus to Homo sapiens was not a straight path. It was a gradual process that took thousands of years, with each step bringing humanity closer to its current form. It was a journey marked by trial and error, innovation, and discovery. But through it all, Homo sapiens continued the work that Homo erectus had started, shaping the world, building societies, and dreaming of a better future. The legacy of Homo erectus is one of the most important chapters in the history of humanity. Without their survival, innovation, and willingness to adapt, we would not be where we are today. They were the first true humans, the ones who set us on the path to greatness. And it is their story, our story, that continues to inspire and drive us forward. The legacy of Homo erectus, the origins of modern humanity. As the centuries passed, the descendants of Homo erectus began to scatter, forging new paths across different corners of the earth. In their wake, they left behind a legacy of survival, adaptability, and innovation, planting the seeds for the rise of modern Homo sapiens. While they had already mastered the basics of life, their story was far from over. With each passing generation, new advancements, challenges, and opportunities unfolded, further defining the journey of humankind. The dawn of new ideas and innovations. One of the most profound shifts that Homo erectus initiated was their shift towards deeper cognitive capabilities. As they began to craft more intricate tools, they were not simply adapting to the environment but actively shaping it. The stone tools they used became more refined and versatile, marking an essential turning point in the history of human technology. For Homo erectus, these tools were not only a means of survival, they were extensions of their creativity. The very act of crafting tools spoke to their burgeoning intellectual faculties, the ability to envision something abstract and then make it tangible. This ability would later prove essential for Homo sapiens as they moved beyond basic survival and into the realms of culture, art, and civilization. The use of fire continued to evolve. No longer just a source of warmth or light, fire began to play a pivotal role in the daily lives of Homo erectus. They discovered the power of cooking, which transformed their diet and health. The cooked food, with its improved nutritional value and digestibility, provided a more efficient source of energy. This energy not only sustained their bodies but fueled the growth of their brains, allowing them to think, learn, and adapt in ways their ancestors never could. It was during this time that Homo erectus began to form the first rudimentary social structures. They gathered around the warmth of the fire, and in doing so, shared more than just food. They shared stories that helped define their identity, explain the world around them, and unite them as a community. These stories, passed down through generations, became the foundation of oral traditions that would shape human culture for millennia. The complexity of early human societies. As Homo erectus migrated and settled in new areas, they encountered other groups. These encounters were not merely a matter of survival, they were opportunities for exchange. Different groups brought with them new ideas, practices and innovations, all of which contributed to the collective knowledge of the species. This early form of cultural exchange played a crucial role in the development of Homo erectus. In some areas, Homo erectus began to form larger, more complex social groups. These groups were not merely collections of individuals, they were societies, with roles, responsibilities and expectations. The division of labour became more pronounced, with some individuals specialising in hunting, others in gathering, and still others in the production of tools or the construction of shelters. This complexity was mirrored in their relationships. The early social dynamics within these groups, family structures, alliances, rivalries and friendships, shaped the way Homo erectus interacted with one another. It is within these social networks that the first seeds of cooperation, competition, and even politics were sown. The ability to navigate these social intricacies became a vital skill, laying the groundwork for the more sophisticated social structures that would come with Homo sapiens. The rise of Homo sapiens, a new chapter in human evolution. Despite the impressive advancements of Homo erectus, the future of humanity lay in the hands of the next stage of evolution, Homo sapiens. As Homo sapiens emerged from the evolutionary lineage of Homo erectus, they inherited the wisdom of their ancestors, but also transcended many of their limitations. Homo sapiens, with their larger brains and more advanced cognitive abilities, were better equipped to tackle the challenges of an ever-changing world. Their ability to communicate through complex language allowed them to share ideas, coordinate efforts, and pass down knowledge in ways that Homo erectus could not. This linguistic ability would become the cornerstone of Homo sapiens' success. In addition to their intellectual advancements, Homo sapiens also developed more sophisticated tools, weapons, and methods of hunting. They learned to use the resources available to them in more diverse and innovative ways, transforming their environment to suit their needs. These innovations enabled Homo sapiens to adapt to a wider range of climates and conditions, from the frigid tundra of Europe to the scorching deserts of Africa. But perhaps the most defining feature of Homo sapiens was their ability to create culture. Art, religion, and mythology became central to human life. Homo sapiens developed a rich and varied cultural landscape, with different groups creating distinct ways of life based on their surroundings and beliefs. These cultures, built on the foundations of early human society, would evolve into the complex civilizations that we recognize today. The legacy of Homo erectus, a bridge to the future. The story of Homo erectus is not merely one of survival, it is a story of creativity, adaptation and innovation. Without their contributions, the trajectory of human history would have been dramatically different. Homo erectus laid the groundwork for the development of language, culture, and technology. They were the pioneers who set humanity on the path to greatness. As Homo sapiens took their place on the world stage, they carried with them the legacy of Homo erectus. They built upon the innovations and knowledge passed down through generations, pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Homo sapiens' ability to dream, to imagine and to create is rooted in the evolutionary journey that began with Homo erectus. Today, as we look back on our history, we see that the story of humanity is not a linear progression but a series of steps, each building upon the last. Homo erectus may no longer walk the earth, but their legacy lives on in us. We are the heirs to their ingenuity, their courage, and their creativity. The world we live in today, the societies we have built, the technologies we have developed, and the cultures we have created, are all the result of the efforts of our distant ancestors. Homo erectus may have been the first to take the bold steps that led to human civilization, but it is Homo sapiens who have carried their torch into the future. Conclusion: the eternal flame of human progress. As we continue to evolve, we are reminded of the journey that has brought us here. From the first steps of Homo erectus to the rise of Homo sapiens and beyond, humanity's story is one of resilience, innovation, and boundless potential. the flame of human progress burns brightly, fueled by the knowledge and wisdom of those who came before us. The legacy of Homo erectus is not just a chapter in the past, but a guiding force for the future. Their story is our story, a story of survival, creativity, and the unyielding pursuit of knowledge. And as we look to the future, we carry their flame forward, shaping the world in ways they could only have dreamed of. The journey of human evolution, from Homo erectus to Homo sapiens, was one of gradual but profound change. A species that had once been reliant on the resources of the forest now found itself expanding beyond its tree-bound existence onto the vast and often dangerous savannas. Over time, Homo erectus, the great adventurers of their era, transformed the way the world was perceived and interacted with. They carved paths across harsh landscapes, hunted the great beasts, and built tools that would shape the world for millennia. However, the time would soon come for an even more remarkable transformation. Around 100,000 years ago, Homo sapiens began to emerge as the dominant force on the planet. In the dense jungles atop mountain ranges and along the banks of rivers, this new species was unlike any that had come before. They possessed unparalleled cognitive abilities, a highly complex social structure, and most notably, the ability to plan, think abstractly, and communicate through a refined form of language. As Homo sapiens ventured out of Africa, they spread across the globe, meeting new environments, challenges, and other species. It was in these journeys that humanity truly began to shape the Earth to its will. With a sharpened mind, the Homo sapiens learned how to adapt to the most extreme climates, from the icy tundras of the north to the deserts of the south. They crafted tools not just for survival, but for invention and creation. This new breed of humans could create fire, develop complex tools, and build structures that would stand the test of time. One of the greatest milestones of Homo sapiens was their ability to invent art. The first paintings, carvings, and sculptures appeared on cave walls, telling stories of their world, their beliefs, and their experiences. These early artworks were not just decorations, but forms of communication. They expressed emotions, told stories, and documented their understanding of the world. The imagination that had been kindled during the days of the first fire now bloomed into full expression. It was this creativity that allowed Homo sapiens to overcome their greatest challenges. While the Neanderthals, their close relatives, had relied on their brute strength, Homo sapiens had the ability to think ahead. They devised hunting strategies, developed farming practices, and began to settle in one place. Their settlements grew into villages, then towns, and eventually sprawling cities. The shift from a nomadic lifestyle to one of settled agriculture was a revolution in itself, laying the foundation for the complex societies that would follow. But as Homo sapiens began to dominate the Earth, they also began to realize that their survival was not just a matter of strength or intelligence. It was also about cooperation. Homo sapiens were not solitary creatures like the animals they once competed with. They formed societies, built networks of trade, and established rules to govern their interactions. This sense of unity allowed them to tackle problems that no other species could face alone. It was the beginning of culture, civilization, and the systems of power that would define humanity for centuries to come. However, with these advancements came new challenges. The greater the success of Homo sapiens, the more complex their world became. Hierarchies emerged, and the wealth of some grew at the expense of others. The social structure became more stratified, and while some humans lived in luxury, others lived in poverty. The invention of agriculture, for example, allowed for surplus food but also created a dependence on land. Those who controlled the land had the power, while others became bound to it. The rise of cities brought about new forms of leadership. The early egalitarian tribes gave way to kings, pharaohs, and emperors. Power became concentrated in the hands of a few, and with it the complexities of governance, war, and diplomacy emerged. The first written laws appeared, setting the framework for what would become the legal systems of modern societies. With these laws came the first notions of justice, fairness, and rights, ideas that would shape the moral compass of future civilizations. As Homo sapiens grew more numerous and spread across the planet, They encountered new challenges such as climate change, disease, and the need for resources. They had already altered the landscape with their cities, farms, and roads. Now, they began to manipulate the environment in ways they had never done before. The Industrial Revolution was still millennia away, but early humans began to domesticate animals, change the course of rivers, and transform the Earth in ways that would set the stage for the future. By the time of the earliest civilizations, such as Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, Homo sapiens had established themselves as the dominant species on Earth. But their story was far from over. What lay ahead was an even greater transformation, as their intellect and innovation would lead them into the age of science, philosophy, and technological advancement. As humans began to develop written language, they started to record their histories, beliefs, and discoveries. These early records were not just practical, they were philosophical. The Egyptians built the pyramids not just as tombs for their pharaohs, but as statements of their understanding of the cosmos. The Greeks, with their profound love of knowledge, began to explore the nature of the universe, birth, life, and death. The Egyptians believed that humanity's purpose was to maintain harmony in the world, a balance between chaos and order. The Greeks, on the other hand, sought to understand the world through logic and reason. They developed democracy, philosophy, and early science. It was here that humanity began to question its place in the universe, to wonder about the gods, and to seek meaning beyond the physical world. The ancient civilizations left behind legacies that would shape the world for centuries. They created the foundations of the systems that would eventually give rise to the modern world. The Romans, with their engineering marvels and their empire-building strategies, established a new global order. The Chinese, with their deep philosophical traditions and inventions, laid the groundwork for a new age of exploration and scientific discovery. As the world grew more interconnected, the human race faced a crossroads. The journey of Homo sapiens, from the early days of survival to the present age of exploration, is not just a story of survival, but of growth, transformation, and adaptation. It is a journey that continues today, as humanity reaches for the stars, explores the depths of the oceans, and pushes the boundaries of what is possible. But even as we stand at the edge of a new age, we must remember that the story of Homo sapiens is not just one of progress. It is also a story of mistakes, of battles fought, and of lessons learned. The very technology that allowed us to reach new heights also poses challenges and dangers. Our future will depend on how we navigate these challenges, how we continue to innovate and adapt, and how we choose to live together in this ever-changing world. The story of humanity is still unfolding. Each generation adds a new chapter to this epic tale, a tale of adventure, discovery, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge. And as we look back on the achievements of those who came before us, we are reminded of the incredible journey we have all been a part of. The next chapter of this story is ours to write. As Homo sapiens spread across the globe, their impact on the Earth became increasingly profound. With each new step, they adapted to new environments, faced fresh challenges, and invented new solutions to their problems. However, the journey was not without obstacles. As human populations grew, the pressures on resources intensified. The need for food, shelter, and security was constant, and yet the more the humans advanced, the more they realized that they had to balance their desires for progress with the preservation of their environment. The first great civilizations were born out of this struggle. From the fertile lands of Mesopotamia to the banks of the Nile, human ingenuity and creativity flourished. People built massive structures that touched the heavens, created intricate systems of governance, and developed early forms of writing and law. These civilizations were built on the collective efforts of individuals who understood the power of cooperation. Yet, beneath the surface, there were signs that this progress came at a cost. The rise of agriculture, for example, transformed the way humans lived. No longer were they solely dependent on hunting and gathering. With the domestication of animals and the cultivation of crops, societies began to settle in one place. But this shift also introduced new complexities. As populations grew, so did the competition for resources. The wealthy class began to consolidate power, while the poor struggled to survive. societies became more stratified, and the seeds of inequality were sown. At the same time, the early societies began to grapple with philosophical and spiritual questions. What was the purpose of life? What was the nature of the universe? Humans, once confined to the trees and savanna, now sought to understand the very forces that govern the cosmos. Ancient Egyptians, with their complex religious beliefs and monumental architecture, believed in an afterlife and saw themselves as the keepers of the divine order. The Greeks, with their deep exploration of reason and logic, began to form the foundations of philosophy, pondering the nature of existence, ethics, and the human soul. Yet it was the conflict between progress and preservation that would define much of humanity's future. As civilizations flourished, the environment around them began to feel the strain. Deforestation, overuse of soil, and the depletion of resources became evident. The ancient civilizations, though mighty in their achievements, could not escape the consequences of their rapid development. The fall of great empires like the Roman Empire was in part due to the ecological and resource crises they faced. In the centuries that followed, the balance between nature and civilization would remain a persistent challenge. As new cultures emerged and the world entered the medieval period, humanity faced wars, plagues, and invasions. These calamities often set back human progress, but they also brought new opportunities for growth. The Dark Ages, marked by the collapse of the Roman Empire, led to a rebirth of knowledge in the form of the Renaissance. The intellectual and cultural revolution that followed saw the rediscovery of ancient knowledge, leading to the age of exploration, the birth of science, and the development of new technologies. With the rise of the scientific method, humanity began to make leaps in understanding the natural world. The Industrial Revolution, which began in the 18th century, marked a turning point in human history. For the first time, humans began to harness the power of machines, transforming their societies in unprecedented ways. Cities grew at an astonishing rate, and the population boomed. The steam engine, electricity, and the advent of mass production brought about a new era of human achievement. Yet, this new age of progress also came with significant challenges. The Industrial Revolution also exacerbated many of the issues that had plagued humanity for centuries. The environment, once a source of sustenance and beauty, became a resource to be exploited. The rise of factories, the burning of coal, and the expansion of agriculture all led to pollution, deforestation, and the depletion of natural resources. As the world became more interconnected, humanity began to realize the consequences of its actions. At the same time, the intellectual and artistic revolutions of the 19th and 20th centuries sparked new ideas about the role of humanity in the world. The Enlightenment, which had championed reason, science, and progress, gave way to new forms of thinking that questioned the sustainability of such rapid advancement. Philosophers, artists, and writers began to examine the consequences of industrialization, the exploitation of nature, and the inequality that accompanied the rise of capitalist societies. As the 20th century unfolded, the world was transformed by the twin forces of technological advancement and global conflict. The world wars, the rise of totalitarian regimes, and the quest for power and resources led to unprecedented levels of destruction. Yet, these wars also sparked new innovations in technology, medicine, and industry. The development of the atomic bomb, for example, reshaped the course of history, bringing humanity to the brink of extinction. Yet, it also gave rise to the space age and the exploration of the stars. In the post-war era, the environmental movement began to gain traction. As the world became increasingly aware of the damage humanity had done to the planet, efforts to protect the environment and combat climate change began to take shape. The first Earth Day in 1970 was a significant moment in the history of environmental consciousness. People began to realize that the balance between progress and preservation was not just a philosophical question, but a practical one. The future of humanity depended on how well we could protect the planet that sustained us. Today, as we face the challenges of climate change, resource depletion, and environmental degradation, the story of our ancestors is more relevant than ever. From the earliest days of Homo sapiens, when we first ventured out of Africa, to the technological wonders of the modern world, humanity has always been driven by the desire to explore, to learn, and to adapt. Yet, with every step forward, we must also take a moment to reflect on the impact of our actions on the world around us. The story of humanity is not just one of progress, but of balance. As we continue to innovate, to push the boundaries of what is possible, we must also remember the lessons of the past, the mistakes made by our ancestors, the struggles they faced, and the triumphs they achieved are all part of the same journey. It is up to us to ensure that the future we create is one where progress and preservation go hand in hand. The evolution of Homo sapiens is not just a story of survival, but a story of responsibility. As we move forward into the future, we must remember that we are not the only inhabitants of this planet. The Earth, with its vast ecosystems and diverse species, is a shared home. The choices we make today will shape the world of tomorrow, and it is up to us to ensure that our legacy is one of harmony with nature, respect for all life, and a commitment to creating a sustainable future for all. As we look to the future, the journey of humanity continues. The lessons of the past, the challenges of the present, and the possibilities of the future all converge in this ongoing story. From the first steps of Homo sapiens to the age of space exploration, we are constantly shaping our destiny. What lies ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the story of humanity is far from over. It is a story that continues to evolve as we strive to create a better world for ourselves and for generations to come.